I want to spend a few moments talking about what is obvious and what is not obvious. And I want to do this using the example of basketball. Basketball was invented in 1891 by James Naismith. Naismith was a Canadian physician who had an interest in what has now become known as sport or exercise physiology. Naismith noted that there was no real game or no real sport for athletes to play during the harsh North American winter. Games that they would traditionally play during the summer simply couldn't be played outdoors during the winter. So he was looking for something that sportsmen and athletes alike could play during winter. He originally tried, as one would expect, to adapt summer games that were played outdoors to being played inside in a hall. As you would expect, this didn't work. Playing inside a hall was too confining, too constraining. So, drawing inspiration from a game he'd played in his native Canada as a child, he tacked a peach basket 10 foot up a wall, and from there the game of basketball was born. Naismith went on to produce a series of 13 rules. If you went back in time and watched the game being played, you would recognize it as basketball. It wouldn't have the athletic flair, it wouldn't have the flamboyance of the game we know today, but it was recognizable as basketball, and it became enormously successful. The game stayed largely unchanged until 1906. Between 1891 and 1906, the game had spread throughout North America and other parts of the world. There were some changes as the game evolved. For example, teams were set at 5 players each. But by and large, the game was unchanged from Naismith's original embryonic idea. And then in 1906 somebody noticed something. Somebody noticed that a peach basket has a bottom. You see, for that 15-year period, every time somebody had scored, someone would have to go and get a ladder and retrieve the ball. There were some attempts at fixing this problem, but those attempts were simply confined to getting a stick and trying to poke the ball out of the top. Someone came up with the bright idea of what would happen if you cut the bottom out of the peach basket and simply let the ball fall through. This meant that the game now became what we recognise as the game of basketball today. You have a hoop and a hammock that hangs from beneath it, but there is a hole in the bottom. It took 15 years for someone to come up with the idea of putting a hole in the bottom of the peach basket. This would seem blindingly obvious now, but at the time it wasn't. It was so far beyond what they were used to and so far outside their experience that it simply did not occur to them. It simply wasn't something that entered into their consciousness. This raises the question of what in your trading might be obvious either to a later version of yourself or to someone else as being not necessarily incorrect, but suboptimal, as not as efficient as you would expect. When I was thinking about this presentation, I harked back to my own experience. I began my trading career way back in the early 80s, during the bull run that we had during that period. They were happy days. Everything you bought went up, and everything you bought went up for a period of 3 years. But it was even more interesting than that, because during the final 15 to 18 months of the bull market, I don't think I ever settled a contract. Stockbroking firms were so overwhelmed with the volumes they were receiving, and they were so primitive in their management of the logistics of their back office that you never had to pay for anything. You just simply bought it, waited for it to go up, sold it. And the profit you made was credited to your account. Then one day the music stopped and everybody raced for the same chair. And the bear market of '87 to early '93 unfolded. And I found something very interesting. I found that I really enjoyed short selling. I enjoyed writing options. I enjoyed blindsiding stocks. Thinking back, one of the reasons I enjoyed it so much was not only was it profitable and no one was doing it, but I enjoyed the look on brokers' faces when the stocks they were buying and recommending to their clients were going down. So as they and their clients were losing money, I was actually making money. And I found this perversely enjoyable. As with all things in markets, bear markets end. And this bear market came to an end. The problem was I was quite entrenched in what I was doing because it had been so profitable. So I'd had this positive reinforcement. I had a set way of behaving. And as the market took off through late 93, 94 into 95, I was still in many ways pushing the same way, trying to go down the same path. And it eventually dawned on me that it simply wasn't working. So I had to change, and it would have been obvious to an outsider, and it would be obvious to me if I had gone back in time and spoken to myself that I was doing the wrong thing. I was pushing a trade in an environment where the environment for that particular approach no longer worked. The late 90s saw us run up into the dot-com boom, so it required a change in thinking, a change in strategy. This raises the question of what in your trading is suboptimal, is not as efficient as it could be. If a later version of yourself came back and spoke to you, what would they say about your current methodology, your current trading plan? Would they be able to spot any flaws or holes? This is why I recommend that it's sometimes good to sit down with another trader and just talk about what you're doing, discuss your methodology. And part of this is not so much a therapy session, but it's more a laying bare of what you do. It's more a critical analysis. It is in many ways what occurs in academia when you present a paper, when you present a dissertation. Everything you think and do is laid bare and open to criticism from others who may be more knowledgeable, may be more experienced. So the question is, what are you doing at present in this present market condition that might be suboptimal? As an example, you might be clinging to the notion that we are in a bear market. Whether we are or are not, and whether the recent highs in the market have meant that this is ending, we won't actually know until some period in the future when we look back and we draw a line across the market and go, well, we're glad that's over. But any observation you make of the market won't work unless it's against a framework of constant inquiring as to whether you are doing not the right thing, but the most efficient and profitable thing that you can be doing at this very moment.